Chapter 94 Kimberly I had pulled every thread. I knocked on every door. It had all led me here to a field glowing beautiful and blue under the full moon with monsters approaching from the darkness. We had guns. We had bullets, all left here for our final stand, for our last moments, our last chance to save each other. Riley said we needed a showdown, and now we had one. Were we ready? Was I? The wolves howled. I could feel the sounds in my chest, they were so loud. The blue jars and bottles hanging from the trees were doing their job all around us. The wolves wouldn't go near them. There was one wide opening that the remaining pack members could walk through to reach us, and in the center of it all was the largest wolf, the pack leader. On the red wallpaper, she was called Serena, but I knew this was Sarah. My character knew who this was, and I believed her. Suddenly, the howling changed. It became more frantic, confused. The wolves started acting weird. They weren't closing in for an attack. No, they were panicking. Some ran in circles, others scratched at each other, and others howled a pained, lonely cry. Many ran away into the forest. "What's happening?" I asked. These wolves were not close enough to the rolling silver for them to be the culprit. Riley, Andrew answered. We were on screen. His answers were limited. "The necklace," I said. He got to the necklace. "Is that what's doing this?" We watched as more wolves ran to the woods while others ran toward the manor. "He awoke the original," Andrew said. "That crazy son of a bitch." Perhaps he was right about all of this. The wolves are connected by magic. The rolling silver has a magical function beyond our understanding. He told me he thought that Clara was alive in some way, that her curse remained. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps the power that gives the pack leader control has been diminished. He was trying to explain what was happening to the audience in case Riley hadn't been able to. The sleeping wolf, the original, had awoken to claim her pack again. We had no idea how that would turn out when she arrived, but it seemed to be helping now. Sarah was losing wolves rapidly. "The wolves are conflicted," I said. "They feel another power." Riley might have had a better way to put it. I was trying. I delivered the line with awe and amazement. That was the best I could do. "The remaining wolves appear loyal to the pack leader," Andrew said as he watched those that remained. "When we use advanced rolling silver, many get disconnected from the pack. What if, instead of disconnecting the individual wolves, we use it on her?" "Disconnect her?" I asked. "If they are linked to her and their loyalty really is the result of some magical connection, then disconnecting her should be far more potent than attaching the other wolves individually. I wish I understood this phenomenon better. I really do, but given what we know, it is our best line of attack. Disconnect the pack, and in the chaos, take out the pack leader." I watched as more wolves fled, as more ran to the manor, called by some unseen force. We would never have a better shot than this. Andrew had to be the one to state the plan. He was high savvy, after all. "You get the pack leader's attention. I will look for an opening to get one of these rolling silver jars near her," he said. That was a plan. The trouble was we couldn't just attack. We needed the villain to have a scene with me for the finale. We had yet to speak to each other. It was time. Andrew moved away, closer to the stores of weapons we had left her near one of the blue trees. As if waiting her turn, the pack leader, Serena, approached. Several of her guard wolves trailed behind her, including Antoine. He was one of them now. I had to ignore that. My character wouldn't know it was him. She slowly began to transform back into a human. She was beautiful. Carousel was sure to show that. "What do you want from me, Sarah?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. She chuckled softly, almost playfully, as though my question amused her. "Sarah," she said, shaking her head. "Sarah is just one of my names. A mask I wear for convenience. My real name, the one that I was born with, the one I can still bear to hear, is Serena." Her eyes lit with excitement. "But even that is just one of many. I've hid names in every tongue, in every place I've wandered. None of them mean anything. Only Clara's name means anything to me. I quietly repeated Clara's name like I was taking in a magical spell. Clara, whose fate led to all of this. Clara, mine but taken from me, Serena said, her voice softening. For a moment, she seemed far away, lost in a memory. She was my light. My love. My beginning and my end. She was everything to me. And then. She was gone. She looked at me then, her expression almost fragile. Do you know what it's like to lose someone like that? To feel their absence like a gaping wound in your chest that never heals for decades, centuries? Her words hung in the air, and I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know if she even wanted me to. She gave me this curse, you know, Serena continued, her voice quiet and steady. With a kiss. I thought it was a sign, a gift. That we were bound by something greater, something eternal. But I was wrong. She was taken from me, and I felt her go. The connection between us frayed and snapped like a thread torn by a dull knife. I knew she was dead. I felt it. Her jaw tightened, and her tone shifted, sharp with barely contained anger. And yet, something remained. A ghost of her soul. A piece that never left. It clings. Clings to what? I asked, the question barely more than a whisper. I was afraid of the answer. To you, she said, her voice cold and pointed. To girls like you. It isn't natural. It's a cruel, twisted joke. Clara should be free, but instead, her soul is bound, scattered, like shards of glass lodged in the world. And every so often, one of those shards finds its way back here, just as you have always found your way back here. I took a step back, but her gaze pinned me in place. I tried everything, Serena said, her tone shifting to something more distant like she was reciting a painful story. I spent decades searching for answers, chasing whispers across continents, begging soothsayers and sorcerers to tell me how to put her soul back together. They all told me the same thing, the shard must be freed. The host must die. Her words sank in, cold and heavy. My breath caught in my throat. So you killed them? She nodded slowly, her eyes heavy with guilt. Mine did. Every one of them. I told myself it was mercy. I told myself Clara would be whole again. That her undying body was still cursed, still capable of life. But she never revealed herself to me. The shard, or whatever it was, would disappear, only to resurface years later in someone else. And I would begin all over again. I stared at her, horrified. And now you think killing me will work? Her voice snapped, desperate and raw. No. Don't you understand? I don't want to kill you. That's why this time is different. With you. I see another way. You don't have to die. Not yet. Not ever, perhaps. She stepped closer, and I froze. There was something in her voice, pleading, yet unrelenting. I can feel Clara's soul near you, she said, her tone softening again. I've felt it since the day we crossed paths. It's in your shadow, in the air around you. You're a prison for her. An abomination. I flinched, and she seemed to notice. Her expression softened slightly, and she exhaled. It isn't your fault. You didn't choose this. But Clara doesn't belong to you, Kimberly. She doesn't belong anywhere but here. With me. As she was meant to be. What are you going to do to me? I asked, my voice shaking. Her gaze locked onto mine, sharp and unwavering. I'm going to free her. But not by killing you. Not this time. Killing you would be another failure, another wasted chance. This time, I'm going to give you what Clara gave me, a gift. Though it won't be with a kiss. I'm going to curse you, Kimberly. Into one of us. Into a wolf. The curse will bind you to the pack, to me. And through that bond, Clara's soul might be able to reconnect to her, as we are connected to her. My chest tightened as her words sank in. I shook my head, a tear slipping down my cheek. You think that will bring her back? Her expression flickered with something close to pain. You don't understand what this curse is. It's more than power. More than pain. It's connection. It's eternity. I've spent years gathering a pack strong enough to bear this burden, wolves who won't falter, who will stand with me no matter what it takes. And with you, with Clara's soul alive in you, we may finally see my life's work complete." She turned away, her shoulders slumping slightly as her voice dropped to a near whisper. "I know how it sounds. I know it's madness. But what else am I supposed to do? Run? Hide? I've tried that, Kimberly. For over a century, I've tried. And every time, I end up here. Back in Carousel. Back where it started. Where Clara's heart stopped beating. Where mine should have stopped, too. The wolf in me told me to rest, to stay in the shadows, but now I know that won't work. It never has." Her words hummed in the air, heavy and final. When she looked back at me, there was no malice in her gaze, only desperation. "I won't lose her again. Not this time. You're the key, Kimberly. Whether you like it or not, you're part of this. And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure Clara regains the life that was taken from her. I'll reconnect her to the curse through you. Already, I can feel her waking in the distance. Tonight is the night." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "You don't have to do this." Her voice softened, a sad, almost apologetic note creeping in. "Don't you see? I don't have a choice. If you live long enough, you start to realize that some decisions are inevitable. I can't put this off any longer." Her tone dropped, her eyes hardening. "This isn't just about you. It never was. Riley had said she would have some emotional justification for chasing me, that this villain wouldn't just be pure evil. She would have some reason for all she had done. He said Carousel could take it in a dozen different directions so her motivation would fit the story that had come before. It took all of my self-control not to just shoot at her. It wouldn't work, I knew, but I was afraid, and I didn't want to die just so the villain could monologue, but that's how it worked. We were here to tell a story. As I stared at Serena, I saw truth in her eyes. She was so desperate she would do anything. Carousel might have given her some lines to speak, but that didn't mean that parts weren't true. After all, so many in Carousel were here out of pure desperation. I felt her sorrow. I felt her mourning. I felt that she just wanted this to be over. Soon, it would be. Chapter 95-1. The wind carried away my shame, my weakness. It whispered through the trees, filling me with the strength and joy of the pack. The wolf reveled in it, delighted to belong, to run, to protect. I felt the pull of Serena, no, the pack leader, like a thread in my chest, binding me to her will. There was another force in the distance, but Serena shielded me from it. I hardly noticed as other wolves fled or defected. They were weak. I was not. She was the storm, and I was a part of it. A vital part. She leads, and we follow. The pack surged around Kimberly, and my wolf heart soared at the sight of her. She will join us, it thought. Serena's jaws would mark her, and Kimberly would belong to the pack, just as I did. Just as we all did. It was exhilarating. It was perfect. It could be this way forever. But beneath that joy, a pang of something else stirred. A shadow of pain, guilt, fear. It wasn't the wolf's. It was mine. It was my weakness, and the wind couldn't take it all. Please, please take it all, I prayed to the wolf god, to the pack leader. For a moment, I hesitated. I looked at Kimberly, bleeding, defiant, and the pang grew sharper. I was supposed to protect her, wasn't I? That was what I had always done. I was the knight in shining armor, wasn't I? My claws twitched in the dirt, and the wolf growled, restless and annoyed. Protect her? She doesn't need protection. She needs the pack. She needs this. The pang faded, swallowed by the wind and the wolf's certainty. It was easier that way. Easier to let go? Easier to belong. Easier to forget. Isn't that what I always did? Forget? All of the bad things were just a nightmare, right? The endless wandering in the trees, the sickly certainty that I could find the exit at any moment, and then the abject terror as all I ever found were more trees. Just a nightmare. Don't think about it. The wolf ran, leaping across the field, its muscles thrumming with energy. Around me, the pack howled, their voices weaving into the night. Everything was as it should be. everything except the blue orbs. They hung in the trees like unholy stars, their glow pulsing faintly, painfully. The wolf recoiled at the sight of them, instinct screaming a warning I couldn't fully understand. I tried to focus on them, to make sense of the blur, but my vision faltered, twisting and dimming. The light wasn't natural. It wasn't right. I veered away, skirting the edges of their reach. The wolf pushed the fear aside, its focus narrowing. The orbs didn't matter. Kimberly mattered. The pack leader mattered. The pack mattered. Serena shifted back into her wolf form, her powerful body sleek and dark beneath the moonlight. She was magnificent. She moved like a force of nature, bashing away Kimberly's gun in a flash, her jaws clamping down on Kimberly's leg. Kimberly screamed, her voice slicing through the air. A small choked voice from the shadows deep inside screamed, "Help Kimberly, you idiot! Help her! Save her!" The wind became stronger until I couldn't hear that voice. I was the wolf. The weak voice was gone. And then, the man appeared. He charged through the chaos, his military gear dark and angular. A mercenary. The pack descended on him before he could aim his rifle, and he went down in a blur of fur and blood. But behind him came another, a tall, intelligent man carrying one of the glowing blue orbs. His face was sharp, familiar. Andrew, the name came to me, a memory clawing its way through the haze. "Andrew, please save Kimberly." Andrew's gaze locked on Serena, his expression calm but determined. The orb pulsed in his hand, its light searing through the air, through me. He was going to throw the orb at her. The wolf's growl deepened, low and guttural. "Danger. Protect the pack leader." I didn't hesitate. I, a loyal wolf, leapt, claws slicing through the air, and tackled Andrew to the ground. My claws tore into his side, hot blood spilling across the dirt. But the blue orb, it reacted. Its light flared, burning through my chest like fire. Pain erupted, sudden and overwhelming. It wasn't the sharp sting of a wound or the ache of exhaustion. It was deeper, heavier. The light pulled at me, draining something vital. The wind, the power, the joy, it was all being sucked into the orb, leaving nothing but raw, empty me. The wolf whimpered, retreating into the shadows of my mind. And suddenly, I was me. I was Antoine again. My claws twitched against the ground, and I staggered back, breathless. The connection was gone. The thread tying me to the pack, to Serena, had snapped. The air felt cold, hollow, and wrong. I could still feel Serena, but I also felt the call of another, a stronger wolf. Where was that coming from? As much as the wolf in me wanted to reconnect with Serena, the wolf also wanted to heed this other call, this other wolf. It was confused. Kimberly's screams cut through the numbness, raw and desperate. I turned, my hind legs trembling beneath me. Serena was on her, biting, clawing, teasing, her massive jaws nipping into Kimberly's arm. She wasn't supposed to kill her. That wasn't the plan. She was supposed to curse her. She couldn't risk eating Kimberly's heart. No, the curse must be applied delicately, or Kimberly might die uncursed. Gentle bites, that was the way to do it. But she wasn't being gentle. Not anymore. Her bites were getting deeper. She was losing control, tearing flesh. The pack leader's movements were becoming more wild and unhinged. She had promised to pass the curse to Kimberly, but her wolf only wanted to eat. She was going to kill her. Stop. I tried to scream, but my jaws only emitted a pained bark. Serena didn't stop. She didn't even hear me. Kimberly writhed beneath her, blood pooling around them. My claws dug into the ground, and I clenched my teeth, fighting the urge to sink back into the wolf. The wolf whispered, coaxing me. "Wait. Just wait. The light will fade. The connection will return. Everything will be fine again. Just wait." The wolf was too distracted to take control. He kept thinking about this other powerful wolf in the distance. "Just wait," he whispered, "just wait, and it will all be okay." But Kimberly's screams shattered that lie. I couldn't wait. Not this time. The embrace of the wind, the wonderful nothingness of all my flaws disappearing, all my pain fading. It was so tempting. The loss of my sense of self and my very sense of reality. Surviving something no man was meant to, surviving so many things. The pressure, the shame. They really were a nightmare. But I couldn't forget them. Tears rolled down my wolf face, wetting my fur as I watched Kimberly fighting, trying to stab Serena with a long silver knife. "Just wait," the wolf sang to me from his hiding place in the dark. "It will all go away. The nightmare will fade, and the wind will take us freely." I wanted to listen. I wanted the game at Carousel to end. I wanted the wolf to take back over and let me hide. "Save her," a voice whispered, too quiet for any but my wolf ears to hear. It was the man. Andrew. I looked down at the evil my wolf had done to his broken and shredded body. "Andrew." The wolf laughed at him. It laughed at me. The wind seemed to join in, laughing at one man's pathetic, dying attempt. "If I win," the wolf promised, "we will win forever. Just a few more minutes." Minutes. I suddenly remembered the timer that ticked down in my mind. At sunrise, we would lose forever. Minutes. Eternity would be here in a few minutes. Suddenly, the wolf's words took a new meaning. If the wolf won, it would win forever. If the wolf won at all, it would win forever. If the wolf won at all, it would win forever. If the wolf won at all, it would win forever. I couldn't let it win. I didn't want to live forever, hiding from what I had done or what had been done to me. Forever was a long time in or out of the forest. The wolf was afraid of the glowing blue light. I didn't have the strength to fight the wolf or the wind, but the light did. Where was it? The little jar of blue light had rolled a distance. With every fiber of my strength, I jumped on it and let the light peel the very hide off the wolf inside, to force the wolf deep inside the shadows it had built for me. The pain was beyond anything I had felt before, and soon, I had to run from it or I risked collapsing. But when I ran as myself. A wolf body, but a man inside. My body lurched forward, clumsy and desperate. I didn't run with the wind anymore. I ran into it. I slammed into Serena, tackling her off Kimberly with a snarl. For the first time, I felt nothing, no connection, no bond, no joy. Only defiance. Only the faint, flickering remnants of what was still me. "Get off her!" I roared in a voice only a fellow monster could understand. Serena's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed. Her lips curled into a snarl, and she laughed as well as a werewolf could, a low, guttural sound that made my stomach turn. Her stance, her teeth. She didn't think much of me or my chances. She might have been right. She had been a wolf longer than me. But Kimberly needed me, and I wasn't going to wait any longer. Serena lunged, her claws slicing through the air. I barely dodged, the tips raking across my shoulder. The pain flared, but I ignored it. My focus was on Kimberly, on her bloodied body lying in the dirt. She was looking at me now. Serena saw where my gaze lingered and bared her teeth. As my body weakened, strength anew flowed into me. Grit. Metal. I didn't know where it was coming from at first, but then I remembered. I was the knight in shining armor again. Maybe for the last time. I was getting buffed for protecting Kimberly. I snarled, leaping forward with all the strength I had left. I collided with Serena, driving her back a few steps. My claws found her fur, and I ripped at her side, but it wasn't enough. She twisted, her jaws snapping inches from my throat, forcing me to back away. The wolf inside me growled, frustrated. "Let me backing," it whispered. "You can't be happy without me. Let me take the pain. Let me take the fear." I could barely hear it. The wolf snarled. "Kimberly is almost already gone. Wait, and it will all disappear." But I couldn't. I wouldn't. With a roar, I lunged at Serena again, slamming into her with everything I had. My teeth found her shoulder, and I bit down hard, tasting blood. She howled, her body twisting as she threw me off. The fight blurred into a frantic rhythm of snarls, slashes, and blood. Serena was faster, stronger, and impossibly precise. Each time I lunged, She was already gone, her claws tearing into me before I could react. Pain ripped through my sides, my legs, my arms, but I kept moving. Kept trying. The wolves that remained watched from the edges of the clearing, their eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Some howled, their cries echoing through the fields. Others stood frozen, uncertain. The pack was crumbling without the connection, without Serena's control. But she didn't care. She was focused entirely on me. She could attack and retreat before I had time to strike. She was too fast. She had too much hustle. Her claws raked across my side again, and I stumbled, blood dripping into the dirt. My breath came in gasps, my vision swimming. I turned and ran, my paws kicking up the blood-soaked earth as I bolted across the field. Serena followed. Her enthusiastic breaths rang as laughter rang in my ears. She was running around me, teasing, readying a strike, her body a blur of dark fur and shining teeth. I veered toward the edge of the clearing, toward a patch of fallen leaves under a large oak. As I leapt over the leaves, she followed me with ease. And then I heard her. The howls. The sharp screams of a dog in pain. I ran a distance and then turned to lock eyes with her. She was on the ground, silver objects poking out of her wolfish paws and her torso. I had been here before. I had been caught in a trap under this very tree, a trap of rope and silver spikes. The rope was gone, but the silver celt ropes remained, waiting for an unsuspecting wolf to wander into them. She had picked up several as she fell. A silver spike in the paw had the result I wanted. After all, enemies could get hobbled, too. Now, I was the faster wolf, and I had to take advantage of it. I lunged, slashing at her side with my claws. She yelped, her body twisting as she tried to evade me. For the first time, I landed blow after blow, my teeth and claws tearing into her flesh. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. We ran across the fields again, lunging, biting, slashing. I was faster. I was winning, but my claws were not designed to kill other wolves. I needed more. I needed silver. We were now back in the clearing where Kimberly was now facing down a dozen wolves or more, alone and bleeding. Serena and I had our final bout. I tackled her to the ground. With a guttural snarl, I pushed the wolf down, forcing the shift. My body twisted and cracked, fur receding as the beast inside me gave way to the man one bit at a time. The pain of the transformation was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the fire burning into my chest. One of her claws had found its mark and cut deep. I didn't care. I wasn't looking to survive this. I didn't deserve it. My hands, human hands again, reached for one of the silver celt ropes embedded in her torso. The metal bit into my palm, but I gripped it tightly, ignoring the searing pain as the sharp edges burned my skin. Serena lunged at me, her jaws wide, her eyes filled with fury. I dodged, barely. With everything I had left, I drove the thin silver spike into her chest, between her ribs, forcing it further than it could easily go. She howled, a sound so loud and guttural it shook the air around us. Her body convulsed, her claws raking at me as she tried to pull away. But the caltrip was in deep, its silver bite searing through her. The silver found her beating heart. The air changed. The night seemed to shudder. I could feel the wind blowing toward us, the power of her connection to it fading destructively. I could feel it, the wolf inside me, the connection to the pack, the strength that had shielded me from my pain, all of it slipping away. Serena collapsed, her body heavy and still. Blood pooled beneath her, the dark fur around the wound matted and slick. I fell beside her, my hands trembling, the scent of silver and blood overwhelming my senses. The wolves scattered, their howls fading into the distance. Some fled into the woods, others stood frozen, watching as the pack leader, their leader, died. Or so I thought. She was becoming human. She was moving. No. I thought. She needed to die. My body was bleeding from her claw marks, and the curse that had been able to heal me before was gone. I was dying. She was still moving. I had failed. I must have. I looked at her face. For the first time, it wasn't filled with rage or dominance. Her features softened, her breathing shallow. There was a peace there, a quiet I hadn't expected. "Clara," she murmured, the name barely a whisper. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. She wasn't dead. She should have been dead. I exhaled, the weight of everything crashing down on me. My wolf was gone. The curse was gone. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I was truly just me. My body ached, the wounds burning with every breath. I lay back, trying with all my might to keep my eyes open. The stars blurred as my vision dimmed, my strength fading. I didn't need to survive. I needed to protect Kimberly. Serena wasn't dead. How was she not dead? She must have had a trope to help her, but I had seen her tropes when I was her ally, and she had several unique tropes, but I didn't remember one that would help her here. I hadn't paid enough attention then. I was a lapdog, not a player. I had to finish the job, but my health stats were going crazy. I was almost gone. Serena, though, she was crawling, moving toward Kimberly, toward another wolf, a bigger one. A wolf whose name was on the red wallpaper was Clara Withers. That was the other wolf, the one that had distracted my wolf. Serena was alive. Clara was alive. Kimberly was alive. For now. Kimberly was struggling, fighting wolves and staring at the big Clara wolf in the distance. I had to help her, but I couldn't. I tried to fight it. I tried, but I knew there was no coming back from my wounds. I sank into a darkness, a different darkness than the one the wolf made for me, a darkness that was the end. Silently, I prayed Serena was defeated and that her desperate crawling didn't mean Kimberly was still in danger. But then, as the reality of my potential failure overcame my other thoughts, I heard a familiar voice and a familiar line. "Congratulations, you've won a ticket." Chapter 96. "You're here?" I asked, but it was more of an accusation. My heart was beating, my muscles tensed. I was standing. I wasn't lying on the ground bleeding out anymore. I wasn't gored by the claws of a wolf. I was wearing my cardigan again. Jeans. I was me. What a disappointment, to die after exerting every ounce of my will, to finally be done, only to be reminded that this was all a sick game. Silas, the mechanical showman, stood about 15 feet away, the front of his box pointed directly at me in the clearing. There were no wolves. Kimberly was gone. Sarah, or Serena, whatever her name was gone too. It was just me and Silas. The expressionless puppet. Suddenly, I remembered our time in the forest so long ago, when he appeared to me, offering me my prize. And when I pressed the button, I sealed my fate, acquiring bad luck magnet and beginning my 100 years of torment. Of nothing. Of hunger. Of sleeplessness. Of that little dribble of hope that somehow tricked me into believing that if I just walked a little further, I would make it out of the forest. He looked at me blankly, because that was the only way he could look at you. His paint was chipped, and his lights crackled like they were ready to burst, ready to dim. He didn't care whether you were gaining your respect, or being punished for the bad luck of being alone in the forest when the scapegoat was needed. And I knew I couldn't escape him. I had to press the button because this was a game. That was the truth. I felt sick to my stomach. I was sweating. How long did I stand there, staring at him? Who came and decided that I had to have this reaction? That this had to be me? That I had to stare at some little carnival machine and wonder if I was going to spend another 100 years in purgatory? And I would have to stand there staring until I pressed that button. That red button that could ruin your life, and had ruined mine more than once. As I walked toward Silas, I listened to see if the wolf inside was still there. He wasn't. I had killed his master, and I was now alone. "Congratulations, you've won a ticket," Silas said again in his eerie mechanical voice that somehow sounded so intentional, so sarcastic, even though it was a recording, played every time he showed up. I had no choice. I pressed the button. He started reciting a poem, the same one he had when Kimberly had gotten her aspect. He was slow and deliberate. "You can pick one from 3, what will it be? No matter the choice, no room to rejoice. All 3 can save your skin or tear it off again, The question remains, you must choose your pains. In this game of dread, you can choose well and still be dead. Silas, the mechanical showman, laughed, just like he was programmed to. He ejected a small ticket. I grabbed it quickly and read it. You've reached a level where the game starts to get more difficult. Luckily, you are about to get the tools to fight back. Having achieved plot armor 21 and having afterward accomplished the requisite feat of besting a significant physical-based enemy in a contest of mettle, hustle, or grit in the finale, you have now unlocked your choice of aspect. Choosing an aspect allows you to decide what type of athlete you wish to be. Good luck. Bested a physical-based enemy. I said, I did beat her, right? I beat her in that fight. I killed her. Then why was she still moving? Why was she still crawling toward Kimberly? If she is dead, if I actually bested her in combat, why was she still alive? If it was a trap, I wished he could just tell me, but that wasn't in the cards. I must have beaten her. I must have. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here. Silas had no answers. Silas had tickets. He ejected 4 more, one of which listed my 3 aspect choices. My potential rewards. I read it carefully. As an athlete, you represent the pinnacle of human health, spirit, and physicality. However, what you represent matters little in Carousel. What you do with your gifts is all that counts. You must choose among the different paths, the sport, the stud, and the health nut. The choice of aspect will shape your abilities and influence your journey in significant ways. Sport. This aspect emphasizes the athlete's physical prowess and competitive spirit, represented by participation in various sports. A character embodying this aspect leverages their athletic skills and teamwork mindset to tackle physical challenges and outmaneuver adversaries. Their defining stats are high mettle and hustle, showcasing their physical strength and agility derived from sports training. Sport has tropes like buzzer beater, which boosts success in last-second efforts. Dirty play, enhancing effectiveness with underhanded tactics. And workout montage, providing stat buffs and healing through training sequences. Stud. This aspect highlights the athlete's confidence, charisma, and natural ability to inspire and lead others. A stud uses their self-assured demeanor and leadership skills to motivate their team, win over authority figures, and navigate social situations with ease. Their high moxie reflects their charm and ability to gain favor with potential love interests, allies, and even the audience itself. Tropes like the show-off, which boosts physical stats when trying to impress, not such a bad guy, which offers narrative redemption for earlier jerk-like behavior, and be cool, which enhances success through confident actions, make this aspect a perfect blend of athletic prowess and social dominance. Health nut. This aspect underscores the athlete's dedication to maintaining peak physical, mental, and spiritual health, highlighting their wisdom and their intelligent approach to fitness and well-being. Health nuts use their high savvy to make strategic decisions, enhancing their overall endurance and adaptability in challenging situations. Their healthy lifestyle is reflected in their elevated grit, showcasing their resilience and ability to bounce back from setbacks. Health nut has tropes like I don't drink, which boosts grit through visible health-conscious choices. Deep breathing, which enhances focus and hustle by simulating slowed time. And keep your eyes peeled, which allows savvy to reinforce hustle and dodging, making this aspect a strong blend of inner strength, tactical thinking, and physical endurance. Choosing your aspect is a crucial decision. It not only determines your abilities but also sets you on a unique path. Whether you're a sport, a stud, or a health nut, your athleticism will make you powerful, but your approach to it will define your journey. Choose wisely. I had been preparing for this choice for so long, ever since Camp Dyer. I had met players of all 3 aspects. I read over the aspect drop for the sport. Practice makes perfect. Type, rule buff. Archetype, athlete. Aspect, sport. Stat used, mettle or hustle. In sports movies, repetition is the language of growth, a visual shorthand that speaks directly to the audience about dedication, struggle, and triumph and justifies even the most unbelievable of physical performances. Each deliberate motion refines your skill, turning practice into precision and consistency into greatness. Torchbearer. The player will represent the virtues of their aspect, providing boosts to saving throws and causing all tight stat matchups to favor the players. As a sport, you are the torchbearer of mettle and hustle. With you in the story, mettle and hustle checks and saving throws will weigh more in favor of the players, and even lost rolls may result in less severe penalties. Repeatedly performing the same physical action, such as scaling walls, throwing punches, wielding a specific weapon, or sprinting across multiple scenes grants a powerful stacking buff to mettle or hustle, making you increasingly skilled and efficient at that exact act. Only scenes that will make the final cut will provide a buff. This ticket is granted after the player bests a significant physical-based enemy in a test of mettle, hustle, or grit in the finale following the achievement of Plot Armor 21. Selecting this ticket aligns you with the sport aspect. Mastery isn't born in a moment. It's carved out by every repeated attempt. My brother was a sport. Christian needed to be powerful on his team because he was their main fighter. Still, he had to work hard to break out of that role and often used backgrounds instead of his aspect drop. I was the main fighter on our team, too, but somehow that rang hollow. What use was I as a fighter if I couldn't even control myself? If walking through a forest was like walking into a rut in my mind, where I never knew if one train of thought could derail me and turn me back into straggler and one. Pure buffs to physical stats could be useful, but we rarely chose storylines that were straight-up fistfights. No, I couldn't be a sport. The Crown of Confidence. Type, Rule Buff. Archetype, Athlete. Aspect, Stud. Stat used, Moxie. In movies, you can always pick out the main character, the leader, at a glance, radiating confidence and charisma that draws everyone in. When it comes time to put up or shut up, you best hope that confidence isn't unearned. Torchbearer. The player will represent the virtues of their aspect, providing boosts to saving throws and causing all tight stat matchups to favor the players. As a stud, you are the torchbearer of Moxie and Plot Armor itself. With you in the story, Moxie and Plot Armor checks and saving throws will weigh more in favor of the players, and even lost rolls may result in less severe penalties. Your lowest physical stat is added to your Moxie stat. This ticket is granted after the player bests a significant physical-based enemy in a test of mettle, hustle, or grit in the finale following the achievement of Plot Armor 21. Selecting this ticket aligns you with the stud aspect. Everyone will be looking to you now. Whether you succeed or fail, you'll do it with all eyes on you. The Crown of Confidence. What a joke. I had tried so hard to inspire my teammates, to hide the straggler within me. But I hid that about as well as I hid the wolf. Adding my lowest physical stat to my Moxie, now that was quite the buff. It would be incredibly powerful to have high Moxie, like Riley or Kimberly, who seem to be able to mold the story to their desire. I could use it to power up my "you were having a nightmare" trop. It might even be powerful enough to make me forget about the straggler forest. Powerful enough to make me the old Antoine again. The guy who could take it all in stride. Who had nothing to regret. Who had no shame. Who could do it all so effortlessly. I could make it all go away if I had enough Moxie. But I could never put enough points into that stat before because I was the fighter. I needed my stats to be in mettle, hustle, or grit. Moxie was a luxury. But with this drop, I could get extra Moxie for free. I could end my troubles, and I could just forget all the bad things. Like I had been. Like the wolf promised me. I could be the old Antoine. I'd never even remember being the new, lesser version of me. Could I do that? Could I truly forget? Just thinking about it sent electricity through my gut, an excitement I could hardly contain. I could forget this. I could forget Wolf Antoine. I could forget Straggler Antoine. I could be everything I was pretending to be. All my time since the Straggler Woods could be gone. When Kimberly looked at me, it wouldn't be out of pity. She wouldn't have to protect me. She could look up to me, at my crown of confidence, and I could be the man I always wanted to be again. But what if it didn't work? What if I tried, and the damn drop could never let me forget? Because you can't really forget when you know the nightmare isn't just a nightmare. It can't fade into your memory. It becomes a ghost, a specter staring over your shoulder, whispering in your ear. Going days praying not to remember the truth. Hoping I wouldn't get lost in thought and end up back in the forest. Seeing people in the distance and having a visceral fear that they might be one of the other stragglers. What if all of this was a hallucination? What if I might still be in the woods? Could I deal with that? Would I even know that fear? Would I remember it? Forgetting only works if you can forget absolutely. But I couldn't do that. So much of what I had become, and what we were attempting to achieve, had come to involve my flaw. My memories were tainted. Could Carousel rebuild my broken mind so well that I forgot it was ever broken? I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. Finally, I read the third drop. If I picked this one, it would give me the aspect of health nut. The mountain is a metaphor. Type, rule healing buff. Archetype, athlete. Aspect, health nut. Stat used, grit. In movies, physical trials represent mental or spiritual obstacles, turning something that is literally a challenge of the body into a metaphorical achievement as well. Torchbearer, the player will represent the virtues of their aspect, providing boost to saving throws and causing all-tied stat matchups to favor the players. As a health nut, you are the torchbearer of grit and savvy. With you in the story, grit and savvy checks and saving throws will weigh more in favor of the players, and even lost rolls may result in less severe penalties. Physical challenges, particularly those in climactic moments, will serve as concrete representations of the player's physical, mental, or spiritual struggles or as manifestations of complex intellectual obstacles they face. Overcoming these physical challenges will aid in resolving those struggles, even healing physical, mental, or spiritual injuries, and provide a boost to grit or savvy, depending on the context. This ticket is granted after the player bests a significant physical-based enemy in a test of mettle, hustle, or grit in the finale following the achievement of plot armor 21. Selecting this ticket aligns you with the health nut aspect. You spend your life climbing the mountain until the climb becomes your life. Every stone beneath your feet carries the weight of your becoming. Health nuts back at Camp Dyer did yoga. They did breathing exercises. Could that be me? I read over the drop. I found myself reading it multiple times, making sure I understood it. Controlling my mental health problems with physical challenges? I wanted to make sure I understood that correctly. Could this really work? How would I know if this was any different than just making me forget? Overcoming these physical challenges will aid in resolving those struggles. Even healing injuries. A cure. I looked at Silas and asked him, because who else was I supposed to ask? Will this actually fix me, or will it just be more of the same? Hiding in the shadow of the wolf, forgetting but not forever? Silas didn't answer. But I knew the answer. If I picked stud, sure, it would be helpful. The extra moxie, the ability to be like Kimberly, a crowd favorite. I would be able to use my nightmare drop to just forget. But forgetting wasn't a solution. I was the man with the bad memories. I was the man lost in the forest. To forget would be to kill myself in some small way. It would be to give in to the wolf again, to his promises of peace and happiness. I stood there before Silas, just thinking. What if this was a real cure and not just some cheat? And then, as I thought about it, a beautiful vision spread out before me in my mind. What if I could become the man who beat this problem? What if I could remember the forest, and the wolf, and all my mistakes, and not shudder, and not desire to hide in the shadows? What if there was a future where I remembered, and I was still okay? If that future existed, I could never get it with all the moxie in the world. That future required grit, not just the stat. It required me to tough it out, to stop hiding. I took the aspect tropes for stud and sport, and I put them into Silas' slot. They were sucked back in. And then, in an instant, I was lying on the ground again. The blue lights in the trees lit up the sky, but they didn't bother me anymore. The gashes were back in my chest, and yet somehow I felt like the lights on all of my statuses were blinking less often, that my dead status specifically was barely lit at all, and not for long. I had lost one of my tropes. It had come unequipped. But now the mountain as a metaphor was equipped. Was this it? The faint assistance that trop promised in healing and grit? It didn't matter. I was alive enough to see Kimberly, or what had become of her, even if I wasn't strong enough to get to her. I could at least see it. I saw her standing tall amongst the wolves. She was on screen. Next to no time had passed while I got my aspect. I couldn't protect her, not from all the way over here. Not bleeding out. Not now that I had lost the wolf. She was the only one of us left. The timer in my head had disappeared. If I had beaten the pack leader, then all she had to do was survive, to end the movie on a high note. It would have to come down to her. Chapter 97 Riley For a moment, I panicked as I watched the big silver screen. We had not planned on Antoine recovering. Sure, we had hoped for it when we used his nightmare trap to try and ease some of his trauma so he might stand a fighting chance against the wolf, but that was a pipe dream. It was uninformed. It was meant to make Kimberly feel better. Somehow, he had beaten the curse. I couldn't be sure, but I assumed it was because our advanced rolling silver disconnected him from the pack. Maybe it was even the emergence of Clara Wolf. Whatever the case, it did create a dilemma. With the pack leader defeated and essentially out of the picture, except for some cheesy little dramatic final words, it meant we had an undead werewolf running around with nothing to do. We had relied on this being our endgame, on using the wolf Clara as a key to beating Serena. We had talked through several scenarios for this. But now that Serena was out of the picture, how did Clara fit in? The good news was that we had beaten the rescue. Our only win condition was beating the clock, and we had certainly done that. Points to Antoine. What mattered now was our final score, and it was up to Kimberly to bring things home. I watched as she stared down the large undead wolf with rugged determination, tears streaming down her face. The screen cut to a pitiful sight at the edge of the scene. Clara, Serena called from where she had crawled after Antoine defeated her. Clara. She screamed out. She had silver in her heart. There was no way she was going to last for much longer. But the script insisted. It was possible she had a trap for it. Heck, the undead Clara Wolf might have had a trap that caused this to happen. It could also have been the result of our improvisation altering the script. I had no idea. That's not her, Kimberly said, her voice cracking, tears held back. That's not Clara. Not really. She was confident. Serena crawled across the grass, and the Clara Wolf did nothing. It seemed confused. No. It was waiting. It was waiting to see what Kimberly had to say. Clara Wolf looked at Serena. It saw her. It took in her scent. Still, it didn't move. It, and the wolves that had decided to follow it, just stared down Kimberly with possible ill intent. They growled, they howled, they filled the air with terror and wind. These remaining wolves were one complicating thing with the storyline. Even if you beat the pack leader, there would still be a bunch of hungry wolves around who wanted to eat humans. Now, Kimberly had to find a way to defend herself against the rogue wolves, the wolves loyal to Clara, and Clara Wolf herself. Kimberly held my silver spoon knife, ready for a fight. She had a gun in her other hand. And then she lowered them. I remember everything, she said, her voice strained but resolute. It came to me in dreams. I remember the darkness, the loneliness. She paused as if suddenly struck by another memory. Mother. She said mother like she was saying a demon's name. Was she using convenient backstory? That wasn't the normal use of the trap. Normally, it was for changing your backstory to get skills, but she had used it to gain psychic powers before, and it would seem that adding a reincarnation backstory to your character was fully within the power of that trap. I remember your mother. My mother, she said faintly, unsure of whether those were the right words. She seemed afraid, more than she had before, and not of the wolf in front of her. Where was this fear coming from? Her character? Frankly, I didn't know, but we did discover that Clara's mother may have been involved in her death. After all, Amadeus Singh was convinced Clara's parents had murdered her. How any of this tied together, I didn't know just yet. Secret lore really did live up to its name, and Kimberly was playing fast and loose here. Serena continued to scream for Clara, but she grew quieter and quieter. She eventually died without the wolf looking at her. It was truly sad. The details of her story were a mix of fiction and truth, but the feeling was real enough that I couldn't deny it. It was a tragic death. The wolf, Clara, got closer to Kimberly. Kimberly dropped the knife and the gun. "You aren't going to hurt me," she said. She was giving this moment her all. "Because you protect me, don't you? In life. And after. You're not Clara. You're her wolf. My wolf. I know you. I'm her. Aren't I? Not just a piece of her. I am Clara. I remember this place. I remember you. What happened here?" Kimberly looked absolutely emotionally wrecked as she prayed for answers. And Carousel took it from there. Flashes and memories started to play rapidly on the screen. I was watching an edited cut of the film in the theater, so this was how Carousel chose to wrap things up, with one of those vague flashback explanations. Kimberly's voice played over the flashbacks. They were simple. A woman crying over a young, pale, beautiful Clara, who lay deathly still, her eyes open. "My mother tried to cure me," Kimberly said. "She couldn't. She was trying to kill you, to kill the wolf, but she killed me instead. It was an accident." She was crying. I could hear it in her voice. The flashback supported Kimberly's story. Serena wanted me to run away with her, but I didn't. I couldn't leave my family. They entombed me in that crypt and didn't know I was still there, that I lingered as a spirit, unable to truly die. You were there with me, waiting too. And even when I was called away, I still came back over and over again. The flashback cut to Kimberly as a teen approaching the manor with her friends. Then, it showed a similar scene with a different young blonde woman. Then another. The flashback ended. Kimberly looked at the ancient wolf and at Serena, lying dead in the grass. There was silence for a moment. Then the Clara wolf howled. With that howl, all of the rogue wolves yelped and ran into the forest. Even those wolves that had decided to follow Clara backed down, fleeing. Kimberly and the wolf locked eyes and stared as the first ray of dawn reached over the horizon. The night was over. The wolf began to revert to human form, or something resembling it. Its hulking frame began to shrink, the thick fur receding like shadows pulling away from the light. Its massive head diminished, the sharp, feral features softening, collapsing into the delicate proportions of a young woman. But this was no vibrant, healthy figure. What emerged was a grotesque, withered shell, a desiccated, mummified corpse, its skin stretched taut over fragile bones as though the curse could not return life to a human form. The camera cut in and out along with the transformation. When the camera returned, the hollow remains toppled forward, crumpling to the ground in a brittle, lifeless heap, a mere shadow of what had been before. Kimberly fell, too. The needle on the plot cycle switched to the end, and I heard people clapping behind me. I heard them cheering. I heard sniffling. I didn't know if the movie deserved that kind of attention, but apparently, whoever it was that stood behind me thought so. The movie ended with a few scenes where Kimberly found Antwan dying of his injuries as a helicopter landed in the clearing next to Clara's body. Egan Curse stepped out and ran into the manor, moments later exiting with his son and his son's girlfriend. They were covered in blankets, human again. Kirst was crying tears of joy, hugging Logan as his son as they walked back to the helicopter. More helicopters arrived with more mercenaries, no doubt here to clean up the carnage. All of the dead werewolves were turning back into dead people. Kirst made eye contact with Kimberly as he boarded the helicopter. There was an acknowledgement in his eyes, maybe even a thank you. His butler, or servant, or whatever he was, walked up to Kimberly and gave her a check. She stared at it and looked down at Antoine as more of Curse men arrived to help take Antoine away for medical services. Kimberly mostly just stared at Curse helicopter as it flew away, doing that thing where the survivor takes everything in and contemplates what had just happened. Any minute, the credits would roll, and it would all be over. A successful rescue. And while it had its flaws, we had done spectacularly. Messy lore and strange character decisions aside, I could feel we were in for great rewards. But then the movie just didn't end. Instead of going to the credits, the image on the screen divided into several smaller screens, all rolling at the same time. They weren't even on screen. They were off screen, like surveillance footage. I had no idea what was happening. Suddenly, there was a shuffle behind me. Someone burst into the theater and said, "She triggered secret lore." People, there must have been at least a dozen of them behind me now, gasped at the revelation. They didn't seem to understand how it had happened. They didn't even talk to the maid at the tavern. How could they have triggered secret lore? A man asked. What maid? What tavern? Upstairs is saying that she had a vision of the real family, and that was enough to trigger it, the person who had run in said again. Suddenly, I heard footsteps again as people tried to leave. They weren't even being quiet about it. What do we do with him? A woman asked, and I had a feeling she was talking about me. Don't send him back until the story is over, a man answered. The woman who asked the question was standing behind me, directly behind me, grabbing onto something. I could feel the hair on my neck being moved. When I was a ghost in the diecast, I had seen my body from above in the theater. Whatever magic it was that these people, these behind-the-scenes helpers, used, it involved a strange ticklet on the end of a lanyard I was wearing. The woman was grabbing onto my lanyard. I strained to see what was going on, but I couldn't move. I couldn't interact with the world in any way. I watched the screen as suddenly the footage of the manor we had come to know transitioned. No longer the old decrepit building, no, it was beautiful and new, filled with people. It was a party of some kind, being held 200 years ago. I didn't get a good view of it. If this was a secret lore scene, it would happen off-screen, so it wouldn't be cut together nicely for me to view. I would have to just watch the pieces and hope to understand what was going on. All of the little screens flickered and changed, moving away from the story we had just run to another story, something older, something less cinematic. Finally, I saw Kimberly at the party. She looked terrified. She was scared. I was helpless. Could she die in the secret lore scene? What would that entail? Surely, it would be the same as a normal death. We had already won the storyline, right? We were fine. Then why was everyone behind me acting nervous? Out of the corner of my eye, I got a single glimpse of something silver. I knew what it was, so out of desperation, I used the insert shot on it. That was my sole means of interacting with the world. I couldn't do anything else, and I was truly panicking, unable to move, not knowing what was going to happen. And the trap worked. Suddenly, I got an image in my mind of a hole punch being held in the hands of a woman. The woman was staring straight ahead, with tears in her eyes, and she was wearing clothes that felt familiar to the 1890s but also a little to the 1950s. She held the hole punch in one hand and the ticket on the end of my lanyard in the other, staring forward at the screen. I realized this image wasn't just in my mind. Kimberly saw it, too, because the look on her face changed from fear to shock, if only for a moment. More than that, one of the screens displayed that image, if only for a few seconds, before it was replaced, like all the others, with footage from the secret lore scene. Then I heard whispering as I struggled to get my bearings. "You're still in there, aren't you?" It was the woman standing behind me. I couldn't answer, of course. Had she seen the image of herself in the small corner of the screen? Did she know I had used the insert shot drop on her and on that little silver hole punch? "Riley, you're running out of time," the woman whispered. "If you can hear me, if you can understand me, you need to hurry. You're losing momentum. Carousel runs on narrative momentum, don't you understand?" My blood chilled. Whoever this woman was, Whatever she was she trying to help? You must move forward. You must attempt a through line. There's talk about abandoning you and your people to Carousel's wrath if the situation becomes more dire. And if that happens, I don't know if you can possibly survive. You must play the game more aggressively. Oh, folly. Can you even hear me? I could hear her, but I couldn't communicate with her. All I could do was sit and watch Kimberly try to survive the reveal of secret lore and hope that, whatever it was, she would come out okay and not be scarred in the way Ant 1 had been. As I sat and watched, I contemplated the fact that my trap had somehow successfully worked in the theater on one of the mysterious strangers. It worked on them. But what could I do with that information? Tobe continued. Thanks for listening.